Picture a medieval camp at night, fires fading, armor resting beside tired men, and silence settling across the field. Tomorrow could bring battle, but tonight brings a different challenge, because hidden beneath the glory of knighthood was a practical problem, so human, so unavoidable, that even the strongest warriors had to solve it in ways rarely recorded. How did someone wrapped in heavy plate armor handle the simplest needs of being alive? The answer isn't what movies show, and once you hear it, the myth of the knight begins to crack. If you enjoyed these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below where you are watching from. I'm genuinely curious to know where this story reached. History rarely begins with the grand moments people expect. Instead, it starts quietly, with small questions that feel almost too ordinary to matter. And yet those questions often reveal more about the past than any tale of glory ever could. Because beneath the shining image of medieval knights, the armor, the banners, the heroic poses frozen in paintings, live human beings shaped by routines, discomforts, and practical realities that were rarely written into legend. And among those realities existed a question both simple and strangely mysterious. When a knight was wrapped in heavy plate armor, how did they manage one of the most basic needs of being alive? And why does that question open a doorway into understanding medieval life more honestly than stories of battles ever have? Imagine a cold morning inside a stone castle, the faint glow of early light slipping through narrow windows, a knight waking not to heroic music but to stiffness from yesterday's training, to the weight of expectation, and to the knowledge that preparing for the day meant more than just stepping into shining metal, because armor was not magic, it was engineering, fabric, leather, straps, hinges, and layers designed by people who understood that survival depended on balancing protection with practicality. And the first truth that surprises many is that knights were not sealed permanently inside their armor like statues.
This strap
Instead,
holds firm.
they dressed with
Good.
assistance,
The pauldron
piece
next.
by piece,
Ready. To the field.
guided by
Aye, brother.
experienced hands that knew how each plate aligned with the body, how weight needed to distribute across shoulders and hips, and how flexibility had to remain possible so that a knight could ride, walk, sit, and yes, manage the realities of bodily function without removing every single layer. The myth of the trapped knight comes largely from later storytelling, a dramatic exaggeration that imagined armor as a rigid shell. But surviving examples show something very different. Articulated plates overlapping like scales, gaps carefully angled to allow movement without sacrificing safety, and components that could be adjusted or removed when necessary, because armorers were craftsmen solving problems, not poets inventing fantasy. And they knew that a warrior who could not function practically would not last long in real conditions. Beneath the metal existed garments just as important as the steel itself, padded jackets designed to prevent bruising, linen underlayers meant to absorb sweat and protect skin from friction, and clothing that could be adjusted more easily than the armor above it, creating a system where daily needs could be managed with some effort, but without impossible difficulty. Though comfort was never guaranteed, and the experience was closer to endurance than convenience. To understand how knights dealt with such realities, one must imagine life not during a single dramatic battle, but during the long stretches between moments of action, during travel across muddy roads and rolling fields, where hours pass slowly beneath the sun, where armor might be worn partially rather than fully, and where routines developed around natural rhythms. Waking early before dressing completely, planning breaks when possible, and relying on the understanding that medieval life rarely offered privacy in the modern sense, because people lived closer together, shared spaces, and normalized the practical aspects of existence in ways that feel unfamiliar today. In military camps, evenings brought a different kind of atmosphere, fires burning low, equipment laid carefully on wooden stands, and conversations drifting through the air as knights removed sections of armor to rest, because remaining fully armored for extended periods was exhausting, and the idea that warriors walk endlessly in steel without pause is another illusion created by later imagination, while historical reality shows adaptation and flexibility, with lighter armor used for travel and heavier equipment reserved for moments when danger felt imminent. Within castles, architecture itself reflected practical thinking, as seen in the garderobe, a latrine built into thick stone walls, allowing waste to drop away from living areas, demonstrating that medieval engineers cared deeply about hygiene within the limits of their knowledge, and knights inside such environments simply removed outer layers like anyone else would remove heavy clothing, reminding us again that despite symbolic status, they remained participants in the same daily routines shared by everyone around them. Yet the most overlooked figure in this story may be the squire, a young assistant whose responsibilities extended far beyond polishing armor, because the process of dressing and undressing required coordination, trust, and familiarity with the wearer's habits. And in moments when armor needed adjustment quickly, the squire's role became essential, ensuring both efficiency and a measure of dignity in situations that might otherwise feel awkward. And this relationship between knight and squire highlights how medieval life depended on teamwork, even in private matters rarely discussed openly. The psychological experience of wearing armor also deserves attention, because stepping into plate was not merely a physical act but a transformation of identity. The sound of metal shifting with each movement, the narrowing of vision through a visor, the awareness of weight pressing constantly against the body, all contributing to a sense of distance from ordinary life. Yet underneath remained a person subject to hunger, fatigue, and the same biological needs that define humanity across centuries. And perhaps this is why later generations preferred to focus on heroic imagery instead of mundane reality, because acknowledging such details makes history feel closer, less mythical, more relatable. Hygiene practices themselves challenge modern stereotypes, as medieval people valued cleanliness even if their methods differed from contemporary standards, washing linen garments more frequently than outer layers, visiting bathhouses where available, and understanding that maintaining personal condition was linked to reputation and social standing, particularly for knights whose appearance reflected not only themselves but the households they represented. As night settled over camps or castle courtyards, armor often rested nearby rather than remaining worn continuously, its polished surface catching firelight while conversation softened, and stories passed between individuals who, in those quieter hours, appeared less like symbols of legend and more like travelers navigating uncertainty. And it is within these moments that history becomes intimate, revealing how individuals balance the expectations placed upon them with the practical realities of being human. Over time, myths grew stronger than truth, shaped by artists and writers who emphasized spectacle while overlooking daily routines, and so questions like how knights managed bodily functions became framed as jokes or impossibilities, when in reality the answer is far simpler: thoughtful design, adaptation, and a willingness to accept discomfort as part of life. Just as people today adjust clothing or equipment to meet their needs. Standing in a modern museum before a suit of armor, one might feel a sense of distance, imagining an age defined entirely by grandeur. Yet understanding these hidden details bridges that gap, transforming silent metal into a reminder of lived experience, of individuals who navigated challenges both dramatic and ordinary. And perhaps that is the true purpose of exploring dark history storytelling. Not to shock or disturb, but to reveal the quiet truths hidden beneath familiar images, showing that even symbols of strength carried vulnerabilities unseen by those who only witnessed the surface. The knight's dirty secret, then, is not something scandalous, but something profoundly human. The acknowledgement that beneath every layer of steel existed a person solving practical problems with creativity and resilience, adapting technology to the realities of the body, and leaving behind clues that invite us to look closer, to question assumptions, and to see history not as distant myth but as a mirror reflecting our own daily lives, reminding us that the past was never as different from the present as we imagine, and that sometimes the most intriguing mysteries are not about grand events but about the quiet details that connect us across centuries, turning a simple question into an exploration of humanity itself, where the echo of steel becomes less about armor and more about the people who live within it, moving through their world with determination, humor, and an understanding that survival often depended on solving the smallest problems as carefully as the largest ones. And when we listen closely to these overlooked stories, we discover a richer, more authentic vision of the medieval world, one where practicality walked beside honor, where engineering served daily life as much as defense, and where the truth, once uncovered, feels both surprising and strangely familiar, leaving us with a new perspective that lingers long after the story ends and invites us to continue asking questions about the hidden realities behind history's most iconic images.